Kevin Peterson scored his first-class 100 for 646 days, one he then converted into his first ever triple, an extraordinary innings which almost single-handedly has given Surrey a big first innings lead over Leicestershire on the second day of the LV County Championship match at the Kia Oval. Strap yourself in. Leicestershire began the second morning in an ideal way, Clip Mackay having Kumar Sangakkara caught in the slips to the ninth ball of the day after the Sri Lankan had added only a single to his overnight 35. 3 overs later and Neil Pinner was in the action again at second slip. Stephen Davis on his way for 6 with his side on 119 for 4, still some way behind Leicestershire's first day 292. Peterson had started his day on 35 and it took him the best part of an hour to get to his second championship 50 of the summer, this one occupying 90 balls with 6 fours and 1 6. He was in a determined mood, batting well for his team, which needed him to go on and make a big score from here. It was his new partner Jason Roy who played in the way people often expect Peterson to do. Roy is a man who loves to hit boundaries and he took these 3 off the same Charlie Shrek over. It meant that Surrey were able to advance their total to 164 and were just putting themselves on top when Shrek retaliated by having Roy caught behind off the drive, a shot he may have wanted to have left in the closet after taking 12 off the over at that point. Roy was gone for 27 and it was only at that point that Peterson began to open up a little. The discussions continue across the country as to whether he should be back in the England fold. Whether he has a chance or not, you had to admire his timing and not just of these shots which began to see him move quickly through the numbers. His second maximum off Jigganake took him into the 90s and a good crowd in South London moved to the edge of their seats. Peterson survived a couple of appeals off successive balls from Mackay. Mark Cosgrove had slipped, convinced that an inside edge had been used here. But next ball, a more cultured stroke brought Peterson his 100. He did make a ton against the Oxford students in a friendly match last month, so this was the first-class 100 since his 113 for England against Australia in Manchester in August 2013. Even though this was the 50th first-class ton of the 34-year-old's career, he jumped and fist-pumped for joy as if it was his very first. It had come off 153 balls with 12 fours and 2 sixes. So he batted through the morning session, going on to dominate a 6-wicket partnership of 77 with Gary Wilson, who was out off a miss-hit for 18 at 241 for 6, Nake with his first wicket of the season. Peterson, though, was now really warming up. He'd moved on to 142 when he lost Gareth Batty at the other end for 15. Nake involved again as Peterson was nearly taken out at the non-striker's end. He was probably pleased that Ned Eckersley held on. Peterson was at his 150 off his 228th delivery. His boundary count had by now moved on to 24s and 2 sixes. He had his side into the lead, but only the biggest Peterson fans in the world could have imagined what was to happen next. After all, it was only now that he really began to let loose. A slender first innings lead still looked the most likely when Tom Curran was out for 18, nicking off to a wide ball from Mackay with the second new ball, yet more than 200 runs were to be plundered as Peterson moved into overdrive. He was dropped 4 times overall, twice before he got to his 200, which arrived off his 276th delivery. 26 fours and 2 sixes had been struck by him so far, and he was from now on to deal almost exclusively in fours and maximums. Alex Stewart described it as one of the most incredible innings he's ever seen, and few would disagree. We'll move forward onto the moment he lost Chris Tremlett, who'd done a great job himself in making 30, adding 101 runs in 19 overs with Peterson, who was on 223 when he was joined by last man Matt Dunn. Dunn had the best seat in the house for the next hour or so, as this became a one-man show, and what a show it was. Peterson passed his previous best for Surrey of 234 made in Guildford 3 years ago, and he was also to better the best of his career, which had dated back to 2002 when he made an unbeaten 254 for Nottinghamshire against Middlesex. It began to rain sixes as he got to his 250 off 311 balls, and in a real hurry he was on his way to a triple ton, which will have everyone in the game talking. Tweets started to come in from across the cricketing world, as those finding out what was going on in South London were probably now stuck on the scoreboard on the internet. Sangakkara described it later as one of the best knocks he'd seen, calling it special. New words may have to be created to really describe what was happening by now. This was the moment he made it to 300, a typically audacious stroke from a man who was loving every minute of this. It was his 10th maximum to take him to 300 off 349 balls. It had become one of those I was there moments. For those that were lucky enough to be at the Oval, it was a knock which will live very long in the memory. You had to feel a little sorry for Leicestershire by now. They had been in this game for the first day and a half, even being on top for part of it, but now they'd become almost just an audience as Peterson continued to clear the ropes with some extraordinary shots. 4 players since 1995 have struck 16 sixes in a first-class innings. Andrew Simons, Graham Napier, Jesse Ryder and Mukhtar Ali, and Peterson was now closing in on that, taking his tally to 14 by the end of the day. Of the 110 runs added for the last wicket before the close, Dunn had made 5 off 41 balls in an 84-minute stay. And it's not over yet either. 34 fours and 14 sixes has seen Peterson make an unforgettable 326, and who would dare to put it past him to add many more to that on day 3, when Surrey will go again on 528 for 9, now with a lead of 236.